I'm gonna show you how you can reveal anything on hover. Text, icons, images, even whole containers. In DS, that includes anything that is inside of those containers. And you can reveal it horizontally or vertically. All it takes is a little bit of CSS, but it's very simple. So if you give me a couple of minutes of your time, I bet I can teach you how to do this. This is awesome for menus, for clickable cards, you name it, this effect will make it more interesting. First, we're gonna go over how to create an effect where something is revealed horizontally. I'll be showing you how to do it with containers, but within those containers you can have anything. The reason we'll be using containers, even though you could get the same effect by targeting those widgets directly, is so we can avoid adding in extra selectors that targeting those widgets may require. So what we need first is our basic container that's gonna have both of our containers in it. The one already visible and the one that will show up on hover. Over here I have that container, which is inside a bigger container, and that bigger container also has a text editor. And in this container, I have the container that's gonna get revealed on hover with an icon inside of it, and this container that's always gonna be visible with a heading inside of it. In the container that has both of these containers inside it, I'm gonna go under layout and I'm gonna make sure my direction is set to row horizontal. So they are next to each other, not on top of each other. Now we have to add in our classes. Keep in mind that these classes can be anything, they just have to match in every part of the CSS so you're targeting your elements correctly. I'm gonna go under the largest container, so the one that has the text editor and this container inside of it, and I'm gonna go under advanced, and under CSS classes I'm gonna give it a class called container. Then I'm gonna go into the container that I want to show on hover, in my case the one with the icon. I'm gonna go under advanced CSS classes and I'm gonna give it a class called reveal. Next up, I'm gonna go under the container that I want to be visible at all times, so the one with the heading, and again I'm gonna go under advanced and I'm gonna give it a CSS class called visible. Now it's time to add in our CSS. I'm gonna add it under the main container, under advanced, custom CSS. If you're not using Elementor Pro, you can go into your admin bar, press customize, additional CSS and paste it in here. But I'm gonna paste it in here. And by the way, all of the CSS and everything you need is gonna be available down below, so you can just copy and paste it in. If this is helpful, please make sure you like the video and hit that subscribe button. It would help me out a whole lot. Once I paste it in, my reveal effect works. But let's take a look at why that is and how you can customize it to fit your needs. First off, you're gonna notice there's some space on the left side over here that you probably don't want. We can fix that by going into the container that has both of our containers inside of it. So not the largest one, so not the one we added our CSS to, but this one, the smaller one, going under layout and setting the gap to 0. Once you set that gap to 0, the text should be aligned right. We're gonna get into how you can control the space between them in just a second. But before we get into that, you're gonna notice the background color of the container changes when I hover over it. That is because of this part of the CSS. If you want to learn how to change the colors of text editors, icons, and headings when hovering over the container, I have a great video explaining exactly that. The link is in the description. And I also have another video showing you how to rotate them, change their size, or move them when hovering over them. That link will also be in the description. For the actual reveal, we are doing two things. The first is we are animating the scale, so the size and the opacity of the container we are revealing. This ensures the effect is nice and smooth. You can remove this by removing the transform scale and the opacity from both the reveal and the container hover reveal. If you do this, you have to make sure that the overflow on the container that is getting revealed, in my case the icon container, is set to hidden. So you do that by going under layout, additional options, and set the overflow to hidden. And once I update this, this is what that effect looks like. But I'm gonna keep it in because it looks much smoother. The second thing we're doing is the most important. We are changing the width of both of our containers. That is what really enables us to get this effect. The first container, so the one with the icon, at first has a width that is set to 0. When we hover over the container, the width is set to 14%. And our other container, the one with the heading, has a width of 100% at the start and a width of 86% at the end. So 100% of the width minus minus the 14% that our first container now takes up. Now, how do you come up with these numbers? Well, it's going to depend on how large you want your revealed container to be, how large the element inside of it is, and how much space you want between them. If I go ahead and I enable the overflow on my icon container over here, and I set the final width of the container to 0, you're going to see it still shows up. It is just behind the heading. As long as the overflow isn't set to hidden, it's going to show up. There's no space between them. So by controlling the width, we're controlling the space between them as well. If I set my overflow to hidden, the icon disappears if the final width is 0. If I set the width to 10%, the icon is clearly visible, but it is still too close to the heading. So by making it 14%, I give these two elements a little bit more space between them. So just adjust the width to whatever works in your case. Also, over here, you can control how fast or how slow the effect is. You can make it really slow or really fast. I like to keep it at 0.3 seconds. Now, if you want to apply the same effect to several containers, you're probably going to run into a situation where the spacing is going to be too small, because it also depends on the content. For example, if I make this icon just huge, you're going to see that gap, that space disappears. I would need to make the width bigger. In that case, you're just gonna go over the same process, but change out the classes, rename them, and change out the width for both of these containers. For a vertical reveal effect, we have to approach things slightly differently. Over here, I have the same setup. Over here, I have my main container, and within that container, I have another container that has an icon and a heading, but I also have a container that has a text editor inside of it. Over here, the text editor does not need a container. I'm gonna call my main container, so the one that has everything in it, a container. And right away, when I name it, the CSS for the background color and the hover background color works. That is because it is still over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this so we can copy and paste in the proper CSS over here just for demonstration purposes. But my heading and my icon containers don't need a class because they're always going to be visible. I'm not going to be changing them at all in this case, but we have a couple of things we have to do a little bit differently. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste in this part of the CSS into my container. So I get this color hover effect, and the text editor that is inside the container is what I'm going to be revealing. So I'm going to go into the container and I'm going to go under advanced and I'm going to give it a class called reveal vertical. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in the rest of my CSS. And this is what happens. We have a couple of things we have to fix. First off, to hide the text until we hover over it, we have to go into our container with the text editor, go under layout, additional options, and set the overflow to hidden. Now you're going to notice this container has more space on the bottom than it does on the top. That is because it has a gap. So I'm going to go into my largest container, go under layout, and I'm going to set that gap to 0. So that's perfect. But now when I hover over it, we have no space between them. We're going to fix that by going into this container, so the one with the text editor, going under advanced, and I'm going to give it some padding on the top. And you could also, of course, do this with the CSS. Next up, our text in this case actually looks good. But if I make it a little bit longer, you're going to see it starts getting cut off. We're losing those last few words. For this, we need to go into our CSS and adjust the max height. So before we were using width, now we are using max height. But instead of %, this time I'm using pixels, which is a less responsive unit. By the way, I have a great video about units in Elementor and CSS units in general. The link to that will also be available down in the description. The reason is this effect works best if you make the actual height just a little larger than it needs to be. Making it 100% or a huge pixel value like 1000 pixels just makes the effect less smooth. It just does not look as good. So try to make it just a little bit taller than the content. If I try making it 250, it's still not enough. So I'm going to go ahead and try 330 pixels. And that's perfect. All of my text is showing up. Now if I update this, you're going to notice one thing's happening, and it is this. Right? The whole page is kind of moving around when I hover over this. If that is bothering you, the fix is easy. Just go into the container that has all of these little boxes in them. So in my case, it's this larger container. Go under layout and give it a min height. If I give it a min height of 450 and I update this, refresh the page, it doesn't happen anymore because the actual container that has all of this inside of it is tall enough so that when I hover over this and the text shows up, it isn't making it bigger. Now, to make all of this responsive, you have two options. Either you disable it or you edit it, but you'll likely need to edit the width or height just so the reveal doesn't break the layout. We can do this with media queries. Here's an example that is going to disable the horizontal reveal entirely for devices under 767 pixels, so for mobile phones. So if I go into my responsive mode and I go under mobile, you can see the effect is no longer happening. All we're doing is making sure the background color stays the same to the original background color, and that the width of the element that is supposed to get revealed is set to 0. When it is set to 0, nothing happens. If you want to just adjust them, you just copy everything you want to adjust and paste it inside of the media query and adjust the values. The width, the height, the speed, even colors, anything you want. If you want it to adjust only the width so it works the way it's supposed to, you can just go ahead and copy the parts that actually change. So .container hover, .reveal, and .container hover .visible. And right now it's still the same as our desktop version. But for example, if I make it 50-50, we get this. And our desktop version remains unchanged. It's still 14 and 86. So just adjust how much width a certain element, in my case an icon, should take. If you don't want to change the speed or the speed curve, you can just leave out .reveal and .visible because they are not changing anyhow. They're set to 0 and 100. For the vertical reveal, it's the same thing. We're just reversing the effect, so our reveal vertical class is always as tall as it is otherwise on hover. So I have to make it a little bit larger because I added in some text before, but it's open. It's always as tall as it is on desktop when I hover over the container. And to get rid of the container entirely on mobile, we're just adding in .container hover and setting the max height to 0. Very simple. To make it responsive for even more screen sizes, you can just go ahead and copy and paste these media queries, change out the pixel values, and adjust everything accordingly. I included an example for both the horizontal and the vertical reveal effect for tablets, so for devices between 767 and 1024 pixels. And since these fancy hover effects indicate that the element is clickable, let's just quickly take a look at how you can actually make it clickable. Go into the container you want to make clickable. So in my case, it's this, the largest container, the one with the CSS class called container. Go under layout, go under additional options, go under HTML tag, and set it to a link. Then just paste in your link. And of course, it doesn't really matter what you put inside of the containers. You can do this with videos, images, buttons, even products. What does matter though is what you're gonna learn in this video, so make sure you check it out. Also, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching.